Hello and welcome to the Franchise Tag Podcast with me, your host, Freddie Hall. I know it feels like an empty screen this week. It's just me. I'm not used to hosting on my own, James. This is going to be, hopefully I don't trip up, mess up or do anything crazy. I usually have the guys to bounce us off, but I'm back to just doing it myself, back to how it originally was. But we're doing Future of the Franchise series. We're back again. It's back-to-back AFC North picks. Obviously, two picks I'm very interested in, being a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. I'm joined tonight with James Ogden, who writes for the Ravens blog Red Star Baltimore and writes for Russell Street Report, and is going to be on the official/unofficial Ravens UK podcast, which is coming out very soon. So keep your eyes peeled on that on social media and on all podcast platforms, I can imagine. So, James, we're on to your picks, the Ravens picks. We're going to talk about both your first round picks today at 27 and the original Chiefs pick at 31. It was ages ago now, the draft, wasn't it? It feels like a long time ago, and now we're only a short time away before football starts.
It really was. It feels like a long time ago, but I adore the draft. Do a lot of player evaluation for the places I write. Do a lot of player evaluation anyway. So the draft is a big event for me. So it does feel a long way away, but it also still feels like 8 months till the next draft. So I'm hyped, ready to get hyped for that when it comes around.
Well, yeah, of course. And obviously the preseason games have just happened, all of them this weekend. Obviously, we've got more to come. So then obviously all the rookies that have been in the draft in April, we've highlighted again. They've all come back out. I mean, I know that... See, this is where I was going wrong earlier. I kept saying Terrace Marshall. You didn't draft Terrace Marshall at all. You drafted Rashod Bateman, which I need to keep in my mind for sure. Bateman didn't feature, I believe, in the game against the Saints, but I know Oweh did. So we'll probably chat more about that later. But obviously, you had your pick at 27, and then there was the trade with Orlando Brown. So Orlando Brown, your second round pick in 2021 and a 2022 sixth round went to the Kansas City Chiefs. They gave back their 31st pick in the first round, a 2021 third and fourth, and also a 2022 fifth as well. You get that pick. So we'll start with the 27th pick, the Rashod Bateman pick, wide receiver out of Georgia, only 21 years old, played at Minnesota. What was your reaction on the night to when Bateman's name came out? I mean, we had quite a lot of wide receivers at the start of the draft. We then had a random Kadarius Toney in the middle. And then we got down to you guys and you took Bateman. What was your reaction on the night?
Well, I was thrilled that we took Bateman. I was extremely surprised just because he doesn't fit the kind of profile that the Ravens have looked at a wide receiver for a very long time. Over the years, we've had... It was probably Ozzie Newsome's one blind spot was the wide receiver position, and we've had a sort of catalogue of errors at the wide receiver position, and it was mainly, you can kind of reduce it down to chasing athleticism. Ozzie himself admitted a mistake when he traded for Anquan Boldin a few years ago, said that Anquan Boldin made him think differently about the wide receiver position and started evaluating it differently. But we still continue to pick guys like Brashad Perriman, who were full of speed and not a lot else. So Bateman was a really interesting pick just because he was everything that I do love in a receiver. Sometimes I think I underrate athleticism in receivers sometimes. He was someone who just has an innate feel for how to get open, but doesn't have the kind of wow you off the screen athleticism that we're used to picking. So I loved Bateman. He was very close to the top three guys for me, when I was rating pre-draft. And so I sort of resigned myself to the fact that we weren't gonna take him, but we did. So that was great. So it was surprised but thrilled with the pick.
Well, it's a surprise for me as well, being a guy who's watching the AFC North picks. I was thoroughly upset with really all the AFC North picks because they were all really good, and they were all really good last year as well, and especially the movement in division as well. But I'm sure, again, we'll talk more about that later. Minnesota won the Richter Howard Receiver of the Year Award 2019, first team All Big Ten in 2019 as well. Great career there, 147 receptions, 2,395 yards, 19 touchdowns. I watched a little bit of film earlier. For me, you say athleticism. I think he is incredibly athletic. It's just maybe a different style of athleticism to what we've seen with Ravens receivers in the past. That sort of smaller, quicker, Hollywood Brown being that really guy that I'm focusing on there, I suppose. I did like athleticism. I like the way he followed through the ball. But what did you think his strengths were at Minnesota?
Yeah, he's plenty athletic. Yeah, that maybe I was a little bit too harsh on his athleticism there. But we're used to seeing like Rashod Bateman, I think, ran like a 4.27 40. Like, so we're used to seeing that kind of ridiculous speed in our first round receivers. Bateman, I think, ran a 4.45. Or somewhere around the mid 4.4s, which with it being pro days, you can maybe add on a tenth of a second and put it over.
Especially when they're at their own university.
Yeah,
a little bit of fiddling going on.
Yeah, so I do think, but that's plenty athletic. You know, if you look at the profile of the best receivers in the NFL, 4.5 speed is plenty. So I think he's definitely got the athleticism you need. The thing I mentioned was the just innate feel for getting open is maybe a little bit sort of underrates the skills behind that. You know, in the scouting community, it would be called separation quickness. It's an ability to get open at the break point that he really excels in. So his routes are excellent. He understands how to get open using the small little details, the small nuances. He can get a defender's hips turned at the break point and will then come open. He uses his football intelligence to get open as well as his athleticism, and he uses some physicality as well. The other thing that he's great at, which will fit really well with this offense, is getting open against zone. Particularly across the middle of the field, he just knows how to find the void and settle down. He's got great hand too. You know, we've had a bit of a history of drafting guys with risky hands profiles, but there's no problems with that with him. He's not a contested catch beast or anything, but he's got plenty good hands. I think he's just very good at being a wide receiver, which is sometimes a little underrated going into the draft. And that's what I kind of loved about him going in.
And how would you think he will adapt into this offense? You said that he will work well in this offense, but from an outside looking in at the Ravens, you go, well, it's incredibly run centric. You had that Mark Ingram, Lamar Jackson duo some years ago that was so incredible. You've now got Lamar and you've got J.K. Dobbins, of course, who's a fantastic running back. It is going to still be run centric because that is Lamar's strength, even though he is improving as a thrower. Where is he going to fit into this offense? How is he going to adapt from Minnesota into the NFL?
Yeah, I think we will still have a run-centric offense. Like, we will still run the ball more than we throw. But I think one of the things that, you know, the casual observer will have observed is that we don't, you know, we when we've needed chunk plays in through the air, we've not had them at times. I think that narrative is a little bit overblown. I think we've seen in several, people kind of forget the MVP year that Lamar had, where, you know, he dropped touchdown after touchdown after touchdown on the Rams, which was at the time and still is now an outstanding defense. You know, Lamar has plenty of evidence of being able to make those big throws at big times. But I think that the thing that we haven't really had a receiver for a long time, and Lamar certainly hasn't had, is that basketball team, the proverbial basketball team that you're searching for in your wide receiver core. You know, Bateman brings to us like the kind of small forward superstar ex receiver type. The place that Lamar is good at is between the hashes, over the middle, intermediate stuff. He's a very good anticipatory thrower, and people don't really give him credit for that. And that is why I think Bateman fits quite well with him, because there's the stuff that the routes that Bateman wins on over the middle against zone coverage is the stuff that Lamar's actually quite good at carving up. So I think he fits really well with Lamar. And I also think he just adds a different dimension to our receiving core. You know, last year we had Hollywood, we had Snead, we had guys who sort of have speed and are able and know how to get open. We didn't have that guy, that ex receiver, and Bateman will play that, I would think. And I mean, let's not get carried away. He's coming from Minnesota. He's coming from the Big Ten. You know, he will take some time to translate. But I do think he fits well with the offense. I just don't think anyone should be under any expectations of him, you know, having a Justin Jefferson-like season. That's not what he's going to be. And I'm not sure he would maybe ever be that in the Ravens offense while it's formed as it's formed with Greg Roman calling the plays. But I don't think we need him to be. You know, to win football games, we don't need him to be that.
if you wanted a comparison, you almost want him to be like an AJ Brown at the Titans. That
Yeah.
sort of target big guy. And like you said, you didn't have a big physical imposing target guy in last season, and they're all just sort of small speedsters. I know Snead's incredibly small, but you do need that target guy. And if you get the AJ Brown comparison over in Tennessee, what they're doing, obviously they've just had a Julio Jones, but from what we've seen so far with Derrick Henry, with what Tannehill can do with his feet, again, chalk and cheese with Tannehill and Lamar. Lamar's a way more talented runner. But having that big target guy is really going to help. Unfortunately, look, with all these rookies, it is going to take time to translate, and there is things they need to polish up on. What do you think his weaknesses are?
Yeah, I think the thing with he doesn't have a lot of glaring weaknesses. So this is the first thing to say about him. Like, I think one of the reasons why he was in the 20s was because he's not brilliant at anything. Like, he's a very good, very polished receiver. That he doesn't have any kind of outstanding traits. He's not that tall. He won't go up and win contested catches against the very best competition. He's not going to be that guy. So I think, but he has good hands, and like all the stuff I've already said. I think what it is coming to the NFL. There was. I've been really encouraged with the release packages I've seen from him. So I'd like to, but we didn't see him get off press consistently at Minnesota. And that's not me saying he can't. I'm saying that he wasn't pressed very often. So it'd be interesting to see what happens when he gets a jam against press coverage. It'll be interesting. I think it's just for him, it is the elements of being a pro and getting better at being a pro wide receiver, which is, taking what you were good at Minnesota and translating it to the league. He's in a good situation for once with the Ravens, because we haven't had very good wide receiver coaching for a while. David Culley was the passing game coordinator last year, who's now the Texans head coach. And he wasn't widely thought of as a particularly great wide receiver mind. We replaced him with a guy called Keith Williams, who has worked with some of the best receivers in the NFL as a private consultant. And we've brought him in-house to work with our guys. And we also hired T. Martin as our wide receiver coach. And T. Martin is a kind of renowned, for anybody who remembers this, I don't know whether they will, but he was one of the Brady Six. He was one of the quarterbacks drafted before Tom Brady back in '99. But he's a renowned college wide receiver coach and has been an offensive coordinator in college himself. So we've actually got some good coaching at wide receiver for once, which we just never had. So he's lucky in that sense, and I think that they were quite influencers apparently in the drafting of Bateman and Talon Wallace later on, both of whom aren't really our normal profile. So it'd be great to see how they work with him. And I think he's got a great chance, which sometime before I probably wouldn't have said about a wide receiver going to the Ravens.
Coming from a Steelers point of view, everything you've just said fills me with anger, grief, frustration, fear. I don't know. There's a lot of mixed emotions going on right now, because I really want him to succeed. I've admitted this on other podcasts. Before. I'm not really the college guy on this. It's more Andrew, one of my co-hosts. But I know these guys, and I've watched some of his tape and stuff like that. And Rashod Bateman was someone going into it that, again, you said, he was just outside that top three of like Waddle, Smith, and Chase. And I was really excited to see where he goes. He goes to you guys. I'm like, oh, great. So I've got to be excited, but try not to be excited all at the same time. I have a very inner conflict going on with me. We've talked about the other receivers that you have, I suppose, with Hollywood Brown. You then brought in Sammy Watkins, Devin Duvernay, Miles Boykin still there. Mark Andrews, forget about him at tight end. He obviously one of the biggest receiving threats. But does this drafting Rashod Bateman make him wide receiver one here at the minute then?
I don't think he's going to be wide receiver one in year one. I think people are sleeping a little bit on Marquise Brown. I think if you look at the end of last season, the last sort of 6 to 8 games, he was on pace for a much better statistical season. And he was playing better, playing faster. People forget that in his first season, he had a pin in his foot, and it really did affect his speed and explosiveness. So I do think people are sleeping a little bit on Marquise Brown. I think Sammy Watkins will be better, will be good in this offense. He's worked, his best years were with Greg Roman in Buffalo. So I'm not sure that I think there's too many, and obviously Andrews will be the main focal point of this passing offense, like you said. So I think there's too much competition for him to come out and be the number one guy, the guy in year one. He's got the profile to be able to develop into the guy. But I think he'll, like I said before, I think people should temper their expectations a little bit on him. The other thing just to say about Bateman is he is having groin surgery. So he will be out now till probably week 6, week 7. So we're not going to see anywhere near a full season. We may only see half a season at kind of full strength. So I think, everybody should be sort of tempering their expectations a little bit on Bateman, but I don't think that means he's a bust. I think he will, year 2, year 3 is where we look for Bateman.
What changes for him is the pressure factor. Chase Waddle-Smith, they're going in situations where you've got to be the guy. You've got to be the guy day one. You've got to achieve this because we drafted you so high. You've been known as these phenomenal wide receivers at college. There is expectation. There is pressure on you. Bateman, going from Minnesota, small school, not like, the LSUs and the Alabamas and the Ohio States of the world. And again, with his groin surgery now, he's going to be out for some time. That pressure alleviates so much. And even though it might be like, he might not come back to week 6, he's still going to be spending 12, 14 weeks in an NFL environment with NFL players, watching tape, watching film. It's not like you get surgery and you sit there with these guys. He's going to be learning and developing. Yeah, it's not on the field maybe, but he's going to be watching every Ravens game, breaking down their offensive plays and learning the playbook even more thoroughly than maybe some of the other guys are. Again, which completely frightens me as a Steelers fan.
Don't worry though, buddy, because there have been plenty of draft picks from the Steelers that I've kind of been like, I loved Alex Highsmith about a year ago. I think he's going to be a really good player. And there's TJ Watt and like Cam Hayward back in the day. So there've been plenty of Steelers picks where I've sort of cried into my beer a little bit.
Wow, it's swapped over now. It's swapped over sides, hasn't it? Let's talk about the other draft pick, though. The 31st pick, the Chiefs' original pick. It's Odafe. We're going to go Odafe. Okay, Odafe Oweh. Formerly, for all you fans that watched the draft, Jason Oweh, which was a way easier name to pronounce, in my opinion. But that's why he changed it, because he went to the NFL and he was like, well, you should learn my name. I got drafted. So his middle name is actually Jason. Odafe is his real name. A 22-year-old from New Jersey, played at Penn State. First team, all Big Ten player. Before we go on to this pick, actually, with acquiring this pick, were you excited with that? Were you like, well, the possibilities of ending now, maybe we don't have to hit. There's not as much pressure on that other pick that this player needs to hit straight away because we've got 2 first-round picks. Yeah, it's at the low end, but we're still going to get the best player from into the second round. What was your feelings when, obviously, Orlando Brown, it was a sticky situation. He wanted to be played like a left tackle, but he wasn't a left tackle. Chiefs were in the market for O-linemen. How did you feel about all that trade?
Yeah, I got to the point where I thought we weren't going to do it. It had gotten close to the draft, and I thought that was it. We were going to be keeping him. And Orlando Brown, even for a year, so he only had a year left on his deal. And like you said, he did want to leave. Orlando Brown was very valuable to us as a bookend tackle. So I felt like even a year of him had got to the point where it was too valuable to give up, just even if we kept him for a year, because I don't think the guy was going to down tools. He's not that kind of guy. We would have, I think, given the importance of the tackle position and given the importance of the tackle position in our offense, I actually suspect we would have paid him close to left tackle money. Even though we've just paid Stanley too, I think they would have invested that in the offensive line. And kept him. So I think he could have got decent money from us. I don't know that he's going to turn out to be a top 10 left tackle where he gets that kind of money. So it was for him about being a left tackle. His dad played, Zeus Brown played right tackle for us as well, and told him.
I didn't know that.
So he told it. He died a few years ago, and he told his son that one of the most important things was make sure you play left tackle. Left tackle is where the money is. And I think the NFL has moved on from there now. I think, you see guys like Jack Conklin getting paid a lot of money. It's a really important position, right tackle now. So I don't, but you go up against really good pass rushers. We're going to play Carolina next week, and Brian Burns played on the left side most of the time last year. So I do think I do think he could have got paid well as a right tackle, but it was an emotional thing for him about what his dad had said to him. So there was lots built up in that, and the Ravens really care about him. So I did think they were going to trade him, but it had got to the point when it got so close to the draft, I didn't think they would trade him. I thought it had gone the other way. I think it left a big hole in our offensive line, and a hole that we still haven't addressed. We have signed Villanueva, who, as you all know, had an interesting season last year. He's had an interesting start in pre-season. So I'm not sure he certainly doesn't plug the gap as well as Orlando Brown did. It'll be interesting to see him in a more run-heavy offense and not dropping back every single snap. So I think that will help him, but I also don't think he'll be the level of player that Orlando Brown was. So it was a hole that we didn't fill, and it was a hole I expected. Basically, when we traded that pick, we traded for that pick, I expected the 31st pick or a small trade back and a pick in the late 30s, 40s to be an offensive tackle, or at least to be an offensive lineman. You know, if you're going to maybe secure the center position a little bit more and keep Bozeman at left guard. So I was surprised that we didn't take an offensive tackle at all in the draft. I thought that we would do, and I think it'll be interesting. I've seen some ratings recently on Twitter about our offensive line being the number 2, number 3 top 5 offensive line, and I disagree with that wholeheartedly.
I disagree with that a lot as well, and not that I'm saying it's a bad one. That's again from an NFL perspective, not from a Steelers perspective. I'm talking. I wouldn't put it that high up there, to be honest. I think that Brown going was a very heavy blow. So you were surprised by the Oweh pick. So you were surprised on the night. Did you watch much of him at Penn State? How did you think he was? What impressed you about him?
Yeah, so I do every year. I do about 150 reports on players, and I watch about 250 guys. So Oweh was definitely on my radar. I went on a journey with Odafe Oweh from the start. I think I'd become a bit more of an Oweh truther towards the draft, but I did not think he would be on the Ravens' radar. Again, this was a very different pick. The Ravens are obsessed with production at the edge position, or have been in the past. Matt Judon at Grand Valley State was a record-setting sack artist. Jalen Ferguson still holds the FBS record for most sacks in a season at Louisiana Tech. So, they've really prioritized production. And obviously the thing on Oweh that everybody mentions is that he didn't have a sack last year. So Oweh was very different to what we normally do. We normally don't prioritize athletic profile in edge players, and we normally prioritize a lot of production. We think sacks translate. They've actually said previously that they think sacks translate to the NFL. Sacks in college translate to sacks in the NFL. So it was a strange pick it was an odd pick for me on that front. I was surprised that we didn't draft an offensive tackle, and then I was even more surprised that we drafted Odafe Oweh. I'd got to the point where I was like sort of arguing with people saying that I think I think he's better than you think he is. A lot of people were writing him off as a developmental project that was just an athletic freak guy, and that's not what he is. But I was doing it knowing or feeling like he was never going to be a Raven. I wasn't being a homer with it. But yeah, we made the pick, and I'm excited about Oweh.
What do you think his strengths are? Just because he is a freak, he's a huge behemoth of a guy, and he's young as well, and you've got some older guys on that defensive line. I mean, firstly, what did you impress you about him? When you were writing these reports, and why did you fall into backing him in the corner rather than being against him?
Yeah, so the first thing obviously is the guy. So again, we'll talk about the pro day thing, but he ran a 4.37 at his pro day. Which is just ridiculous. And if you go on the relative athletic, it's really bad. If you go on the relative athletic score website, where you can look at the kind of testing results from players, and it sort of rates them for you and tells you what percentile they're in. You can play around with their position. So you can set his position as a different position. So if you set his position at wide receiver, he's like in the 80th, 90th percentile of wide receivers. in the first preseason game, he lined up at gunner on punt and ran down the field at a ridiculous speed.
I've seen
so the guy has incredible speed and is an incredible athlete. And there's a lot of studies out there about sort of the modern edge player being that speed and explosion does translate to the NFL, and being examples of that, like Daniel Hunter in Minnesota. So he's an athletic freak, which is the first thing to say. But he isn't an athletic freak in the sense that we've had before coming out in the draft, where you feel like he is a big projection. He's very young. He's very inexperienced. But the thing for me that stood out with him that will get him on the field really early and will help him in terms of his development, because often those developmental edge players that bust don't actually get on the field to be able to develop themselves, because you need reps, you need live game reps to develop yourself more so at edge rusher than I think other positions, is his run defense. He is a demon run defender. And people I don't think are aware of that. He does set a physical edge. It's not a Pernell McPhee type edge. Or one of our other edge players who's is probably the best edge setter in the league. But it is a good edge. He's a brilliant backside defender. Like if you hesitate even for a second on an outside zone run and he's on the backside, he's going to blow you up in the backfield. He's going to chase down from behind. He has a consistent motor. So the run defense is there. It's very good. It will translate. Most people are good run defenders in our scheme anyway, but he will play very well against the run, and it's going to get him on the field to develop as a rusher. That's where the improvement needs to come. Which we can talk about, or you might want to ask me that a bit later.
So do you think he will get? So you think he will get field time, considering you've got Derek? These are just outside linebackers, defensive end type players, which I know you can move him around a little bit in your scheme as well. Like Derek Wolfe, Pernell McPhee, like you said, Jalen Ferguson, like you said, Tyus Bowser. You brought in Justin Houston as well. I mean, Wolfe's 31, McPhee's 32, Houston's 32. I know you've only just brought Houston will be a 1 year thing. I doubt he's going to be staying very long. Ferguson, Bowser, 25, 26, good age, getting into their prime. You could argue. Is that you still think he's going to see the field? Quite a lot of times, considering there's some names on there and there's some good players on there.
Yeah, so we play with a rotation. We'll have six outside linebackers. Our two outside linebacker spots are quite different. The beauty to Oweh is he can probably play both. You don't want him. So our Sam position will be Tyus Bowser, and don't sleep on Tyus Bowser. People should watch out for him next year. He was a brilliant re-signing, and I think will be great next year. Very versatile linebacker. So our Sam position rushes the quarterback a bit, but they also play the run, and they also drop a lot in coverage. Our rush spot, the jack spot, is much more of a pass rusher and an edge setter. McPhee is the guy who will probably play. McPhee and Houston will play the most snaps at that position, I would think. But even our developmental guy, so Jalen Ferguson last year was a developmental guy. He still played 300, 400 snaps, I think. So we do sort of rotate a lot. It will help the older guys. It will help Houston and McPhee rotating out and playing on a hard pitch count. But I think Oweh will get plays at both positions. He is athletic enough to play the Sam position. So that's the beauty with him. He will be able to play both outside linebacker positions to an extent. And that will only help him get on the field. And it's mainly because of the rotation that we do play. It'll be interesting, Jalen Ferguson, that's probably another conversation, but it'll be interesting to see what happens with Jalen Ferguson. Usually our edge guys develop in second, third year into actual productive starters, and Ferguson is a little bit still away from that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with him.
What do you think his weaknesses are?
Oweh.
Oweh,
yeah. So Oweh, the thing for me with Oweh is, so he's played about 800 snaps in college. 800 snaps, not a lot. 600, 650 is one season in college.
Yeah.
He had 5 sacks the year before this last one, and then he had no sacks last year. If you watch his tape, and I've now since he's been drafted, I watched a lot of them beforehand, and now since he's been drafted, I've watched every single one of his college snaps. He is adding moves, pass rush moves, as he's going through his time. he's not, you can see he's trying them out in games. He's like Bambi out there. He's like trying something new. It's not quite working. He's trying something else. So he isn't able to develop a rush plan. He isn't able to put all those moves to string all those moves together to be able to get to the quarterback consistently. So I think what it is for him is it's getting to the point where he knows what his rush plan is. Justin Houston will be a great mentor for him, because of the way Houston is able to convert speed to power. He has a really clear way that he wins, but he also has some other moves that keep offensive tackles honest. And that's what Oweh needs to do. He needs to develop the moves that his best move will be a speed rush that people have to account for. But if he can start to add some other moves, like an inside move with a spin or converting to power to be able to go through tackles, that's where he needs to improve. And that will come with live reps, which he didn't have a lot of in college.
It sounds to me like he just needs to simplify his game a little bit to then add them bits on and not try and do everything at once and try and do all these cool flashy moves to try and get to the quarterback or to beat the O-lineman. He sounds like he needs to get really great at that one thing that you are really great at and then add the moves from that. And that's, like I said, having Justin Houston there alongside him is really going to help that factor. Last question, James. Who's going to win the AFC North? I mean, it's going to be a dogfight. It's an interesting division. I still think the NFC West is the most competitive division in football. I think the AFC North is closely behind. However, sadly, I think my Steelers are making it less competitive. So is the Ravens going to run away with it? The Browns going to really challenge you? I've submitted to, as a Steelers fan, that it's going to be third spot, maybe sneaking into the playoffs. I can't see the Bengals getting together just because it would be Burrow's first full season. If he gets a full season, fingers crossed for him that he doesn't get injured again. What's your outlook on the AFC North this year?
Yeah, concern for the Bengals again, because as much as I liked Chase, I'm not really sure they address the offensive line deficiency. And when you're playing in the AFC North, you got to have it. Yeah, Wink Martindale's going to have a lot of fun with that offensive line again, as he had last year. So, I don't see the Bengals. I do see them on a better path than they've been in a long time, and I think the world of Burrow. He showed some stuff last year that was really advanced for a rookie. I also think people are sleeping on the Steelers a little bit, which is it pains me to say. I don't think there's going to be this implosion in Pittsburgh. I can't see a Mike Tomlin coach team ending up less than 500. I just don't see it at all. So I do think they'll be better than people think. I'm sitting on the fence here. I do think the Ravens will win the AFC North. I think the reason the Ravens will win the AFC North is because I think you're going to see a better season out of Lamar than you saw. I think we're extremely consistent in the regular season. And I think it'll be very close between us and the Browns because I do think they're a very good team. And people forget that Mayfield was so good at the back end of last season that he would. I would imagine he'll continue that. I do love their offensive line and Nick Chubb, and so I think they're a very good team. But I do think we'll squeak it out.
I think you're right about the consistency factor in Cleveland. If they can find consistency, they will, I think, sweep it. I think their team is so good on all sides. And I think their acquisitions over the summer pre-draft was so good. Like the Josh Johnson
was a terrible quarterback a few years ago from the Tampa Bay in.
Like that sort of acquisition is just so good. Like such a clever move, a move that we haven't seen from a Cleveland team in a long time. Like, it's now in people's minds that like Cleveland was so bad for so long. I'm like, well, I don't even remember that because it's been like 3 years now and they've slowly been building and better and better and better. It's just now getting the consistency. I think you're right about the Steelers as well. I played down like we're going to be really bad. Like that's maybe based it on that, we went 11-0 last year. I don't know if you remember that, but we did. Though it was a bit of a crazy time. I think we will go 500 again. I'm not as concerned with the O-line as other people are making out because I believe in Najee Harris so much. I just think he's really got it. It's going to be interesting to see about Big Ben. I think our defense is still elite. I worry about over the top for us. I worry about quarterback position specifically, which when you look in division, we don't really, other than Burrow, we don't actually really have to worry about that because the Ravens is very run centric, even though you have got Bateman and Brown and people like that. And again, with the Browns, yeah, Baker's done very well, but it does run through Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Yes, they've got Odell, Jarvis Landry, but it is running through the run. And it's going to be an interesting season. It's going to be interesting AFC North. It could be one of them where it could be really competitive, or it could just be not competitive at all. And it's like, I mean, we're not going to be like NFC East bad. Like, come on, like we got to give some credit to ourselves over in the NFC North. But it could be really, really good fun to see what the Ravens do, especially this year. I still in my mind is the etchings of Marcus Peters running around in the middle of the Titans emblem, just giving the middle finger to the Titans, which, if it weren't the Ravens, I'd have loved a lot more. But it was some good payback, I admit. James, really appreciate you coming on, my man. Where can we find this new podcast that you're going to be on? Where can we find? I've got your name there, but what else can we find of yours on Twitter?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter on NFL Ogden. You can find my work at my own site, which is redstarbaltimore.com. I also write for Russell Street Report, which is one of the big Ravens fan sites over in the US. I'm going to be, I don't know if I'm breaking this, they have a flagship article each week called Battle Plans that I'll be writing this year for them. And you can find lots of my analysis on my own site and on RSR. I will now be on the UK, one of the regular contributors on the UK Ravens podcast, which we had our first episode come out. I think we've got 2 episodes out now, and recorded another one this week. So that'll be coming out on Thursday. So any UK Ravens fans should check that out.
Brilliant. And that's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, everything like that. Yeah.
Or where you get your podcasts.
Awesome. Well, you never know. You might see my friendly face on there at some point in the season.
Definitely.
Talking about the AFC North. I don't know when we play each other. God knows what weeks we play each other. Do you know off the top of the head?
I'm not even sure. I think we play most of our AFC North games later in the season this year.
I think we do, yeah. Yeah, all I know is we've got the Bills first game. That's the only one I know. Right. Thanks for coming on, James. I really appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for your continued support of the Future of the Franchise series. It's been a long summer, admittedly, but NFL football is finally around the corner. The preseason games are on. We're getting NFL back in our lives. Fantasy football seasons are starting to start. People are starting to do drafts and stuff like that. So it's creeping ever so closer to the start of the NFL season in September. And it's going to be a heck of a season. We know that. Thank you for keeping with us throughout the summer, doing this Future of the Franchise stuff when there has been no football. Our regular shows will now be starting, which you've got to catch on YouTube, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, everything like that. But until then, have a good rest of your week, and we'll see you all very soon.